I'm Sean Armstrong, the Super Gringo, and this is Sean Thinking Out Loud. Single camera, no hype, just clarity. Before we start, if you want my books, click the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen. That takes you to my book hub. Click a cover, preview it, grab what interests you. All right, here's what we're doing today. We're going to take a headline everyone is screaming about, and we're going to treat it like adults. Sequence, standards, and evidence, not slogans, not vibes, not moral theater. Now let's get into it.
Every time I tried to stand, they pushed me down. Now I've had enough, can't take it all around. It's time to be strong, time to be clear. No more being used, it's time to repair. No more Mr. Nice Guy, I'm through. Time to stand up, let the world see. No more being weak, it's time to break. I'm done with the pain, I'll take my place.
Today is Friday, January 9th, 2026, and the time right now is 12:18 p.m. here in. Some of these are a little behind, but if there's new information, you can put it in the chat. But I think my analysis is pretty spot on. Also, how do you like the new theme music and entrance? Hurricanes Hedonia, Brazil. I'm Sean Armstrong, the Super Gringo, and this is Sean Thinking Out Loud. Single camera, no hype, just clarity. Before we start, if you want my books, click the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen. That takes you to my book hub. Click a cover, preview it, grab what interests you. All right, this morning I saw a different angle of the Minneapolis shooting video. And I'm going to be careful with language here because video clips don't give you the whole case file. But based on the angle I saw, it looked like the car made contact with the agent and the shot came after that contact. If that sequence is accurate, contact first, shot second, then yes, I lean justified. Not because I'm pro-cop by religion, because I'm pro-standards. And the standard is simple. If you use a vehicle as force against an officer or agent, you are escalating into a lethal force scenario fast. Now, let's deal with the comment section genius who says they don't teach agents to stand in front of cars. Yes, they do. They absolutely do. By the way, that genius was in Grumpy Farmer's videos yet again. It would appear Grumpy Farmer attracts the room temperature potatoes. And they don't say too much intellectually, just why are you lying, and they never tell me the lie. I don't get it, but whatever. Moving along. Plain English. From Training Logic. Because internet confidence is cheap and training is not. They teach you to step into a position in front of the driver's side headlight. Not dead center like a movie, not wandering around like an idiot. A specific position. Why? Because from that position, you can see the driver, you can see hands, you can control distance. And if the driver decides to do something stupid, like surge the vehicle, you are already in a place where your response is immediate. Now, you can find this in my book, Tactical Training with Firearms. Yes, we're taught maybe close to the front headlight. I wouldn't stand in front of it, but that's kind of what you're taught. To stand there so you can put a couple into the windshield, and also they also teach you that bullets will ricochet or hit the windshield and angle down because of the angle of the windshield. So bullets are unpredictable when they hit curved glass. Here's the part the keyboard commandos don't understand. In military contexts, we often have weapons drawn during a vehicle stop or checkpoint posture. So when you're in that headlight position and you bring the weapon up, it's right there in the driver's face, fast. That's the point, dominance of the space and immediate response if the vehicle becomes a weapon. But here's a key distinction in what I saw. In this clip, the agent's weapon wasn't drawn before contact. That matters because it changes what standing in front of a car means in that moment. If your weapon is not already out and the car surges into you, you're suddenly reacting from behind the curve. And if you're hit, especially if you're struck and knocked off balance, your window collapses into a split-second decision. So when someone says they don't train that, they're broadcasting that they've never been trained, never worked it, and never had to manage the physics of a 2-ton vehicle with a driver who might not comply. Now, am I saying every stood in front of a car shooting is justified? No. Some are sloppy tactics, some are bad positioning, some are preventable, some are not. But you don't get to skip reality. A vehicle can be lethal force, and if the vehicle hits an agent, you don't get to pretend the agent is supposed to absorb that like it's a minor inconvenience. Here's the adult conclusion. If the sequence is truly car hits agent, agent fires, then they don't teach that is irrelevant. What matters is whether the agent reasonably perceived an ongoing threat of serious bodily harm. And a car being used against you qualifies. Now, if later information shows the clip is misleading or the contact wasn't what it looked like, this is an old clip, video. I've been waiting for new information. That's why I date and time these. No new information has come out. She hit the agent. Now, whether he went to the hospital or not, it doesn't matter. You hit an agent with a car. A car weighs 2,000 pounds. It was a good shoot. Maybe, I don't know, if you stayed the fuck home. I'm just spitballing here, but I live next door to a cop. I haven't been shot. You want to know why? I leave him alone and let him do his job. Weird. Standards do. They adjust to facts. But if your entire argument is standing in front of cars is never trained, then you're not offering analysis, you're offering ignorance. Now, I want your questions during the week. Drop them in the comments. Do you want the next segment on how use of force standards work in vehicle encounters? How video angles distort judgment, or how internet experts confidently lie about training? Send your questions. I'll pull the best ones for the next episode. And again, if you want my books, click the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen. I'm Sean Armstrong, the Super Gringo, and this is Sean Thinking Out Loud. Today is Saturday, January 10th, 2026, and the time right now is 7:58 a.m. here in Ariquemes, Rondônia, Brazil. I'm Sean Armstrong, the Super Gringo, and this is Sean Thinking Out Loud. Single camera, no hype, just clarity. Before we start, if you want my books, click the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen. That takes you to my book hub. Click a cover, preview it, grab what interests you. All right, I spent the last couple of days watching the videos. Those same books that Karen Carroll, I'm not going to use the real name, Mr. One-Ups keeps claiming are self-published. Yeah, through my publishing company, Super Gringo Books. Yet he has not proven one of those books is wrong in any way. Angles. And yes, I put the videos up on my webpage. I'll put that in the links. And after reading the comments on X and other platforms, I've come to the conclusion that a lot of you are going to recognize instantly. There is a segment of the loony left that is not analyzing this incident. They're not applying standards. They're not asking what happened and what. She could have literally gotten out of that car, shot that agent in the head, and pissed on his corpse, and they would still try to make her the victim. Order, and what reasonable person would do in that moment. They're defending the narrative, no matter what the video shows. Now, I'm going to make a point, and I'm going to make it bluntly. Some of these people act like that woman could have gotten out of the car, shot that agent in the head, and the same crowd would still be looking for a way to defend her. Now, let me be clear, that's rhetorical. That is not a claim about what happened. It's a claim about how broken the standards are in online politics. Because what I'm watching in the comment section is not facts versus facts. It's tribal loyalty versus reality. So today's episode is about one thing. When people decide the conclusion first, evidence becomes optional. Here's the basic structure of the debate I'm seeing. On one side says, a vehicle hit an agent, he fired, that's justified. The other side says, no, ICE is evil, therefore the shooting is evil. Notice what they're doing. They're not arguing the sequence. They're not arguing the threat level. They're not arguing reasonable perception. They're arguing that the agent's job title is enough to convict him morally, no matter what happened. That's not analysis. That's a moral shortcut. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend every shooting is justified. That's childish. Adults use standards. So here are the standards. Simple, boring, and correct. 1. A car can be lethal force. 2. If an agent reasonably perceives an imminent threat of serious bodily harm or death, lethal force can be justified. 3. Video angles can clarify some facts and distort others. So you should treat your confidence level like a dial, not a switch. That's the grown-up version. But here's what I'm reacting to. People who refuse to even entertain standards because standards might point to the wrong conclusion. And that's when you learn something important. They don't hate violence. They hate who has the authority. They don't want accountability. They want their side to win. Let me say this as clearly as possible. If your position is Agent Saul Alinsky, look him up. As a matter of fact, Hillary Clinton wrote a thesis on him in college. He dedicated his book to Lucifer. Barack Obama even cites him in some of his speeches. So think about that. Therefore, Agent Wrong, you are not a serious person. If your position is civilian good, therefore civilian is innocent, you are not a serious person. If your position can't survive a video angle, a timeline, and a consistent use of force standard, then you don't have a position, you have a mood. And this is why I put the videos on my page, because I'm not interested in slogan warfare. I'm interested in what we can actually see. Sequence, distance, contact, threat, response. That's what adults talk about. The internet wants to talk about vibes. It wants to talk about saints and demons. And I'm telling you right now, that habit, deciding the conclusion first, is how societies become stupid. Now, I want questions during the week. Drop them in the comments. Do you want the next segment on how vehicle encounters fit into use of force standards? How propaganda turns a clip into a morality play? Or how to watch multiple angles without lying to yourself? Send your questions. I'll pull the best ones for the next episode. And if you want my books, again, click the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen. I'm Sean Armstrong, the Super Gringo, and this is Sean Thinking Out Loud. Today is Sunday, January 11th, 2026, and it is 1:54 p.m. here in Ariquemes, Rondônia, Brazil. You can tell when the lock on my chair screws up because I'm always sitting a little lower. Sean Thinking Out Loud, and I'm the Super Gringo. Single camera, no gimmicks, just clarity. If you want my books, click the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen. That takes you straight to Books by Super Gringo Books and Sean Armstrong. And during the week, drop your questions in the comments. Challenges, topics, clips you want me to break down. Put them there. I'll pull the best ones and answer them. Now, let's get into Grumpy Farmer, because I'm going to say this plainly, I agree with him on the substance, on the pattern, and on the fact that the comment section is full of people who confuse emotional performance with an argument. Here's what Grumpy said in plain English. He starts with his normal day, loading corn, talking about the weather, the cold, the warm-up, the rain, and then he gets to the point. Some people are pathetic because they'll flip their principles overnight if it helps their political team. That's his core accusation. The same crowd that screams dictator when it's politically convenient suddenly wants to free the dictator when it's inconvenient. That's not moral reasoning, that's tribal reflex. Then he points to what he sees as a perfect example. The same political voices hammering Trump for not handling Maduro, and then turning around and acting outraged the moment Maduro gets handled. Again, I agree with the point. Whether you love Trump or hate Trump, you don't get to pretend you have consistent standards when your position changes depending on whose name is on the headline. Next, Grumpy calls out something else everyone pretends not to notice. How fast the protest machine spins up. Middle of the night event, and by morning you've got organized protests and polished signs. Do I have to pretend that's always spontaneous? No, I'm not required to be naive to sound reasonable. The adult conclusion is there are networks, there is coordination, and there is money. You can argue over who funds what, but the idea that it's all organic is for people who still believe cable news is a public service. Then Grumpy makes the most important point in the whole video, and it's the point the internet always ignores. Federal versus state jurisdiction. The president is not a king. The federal government doesn't just swallow state authority because angry people online want instant punishments. If something is a state-level issue, state-level actors prosecute it. If there are federal crimes, federal agencies can investigate. That's how the system works. And I'm with him. A shocking number of loud political commentators don't even know who represents them locally, but they think they're qualified to run the Justice Department from a comments thread. Carol Sanders, Karen Carroll, we call her Carol Sanders, just showed up with the self-published author stuff. Your books are, what do you say, crap? I was like, well, now all you have to do is prove my books are crap. I'll be waiting. Of course, in order to do that, you're actually going to have to buy and read one of my books. And then we get to the Dave Helmer email saga. Grumpy catches Dave sending him an AI clip and arguing, it must be true or Trump would sue. That's not reasoning, that's superstition. Lawsuits don't function as magical truth detectors, and if you're using he didn't sue as your standard of proof, you're basically admitting you can't evaluate evidence on your own. Grumpy was right to call that out. Now, let's address the comments, one by one. And yes, I'm siding with Grumpy's position because the criticisms here are mostly weak, incoherent, or dishonest. Dave says Grumpy is closed-minded, uses insulting language, and then tries to play the freedom of speech card while complaining about speech. That's the first contradiction. Freedom of speech doesn't mean you must talk to me politely while I insult you. It means you can speak and other people can answer. Dave also claims every country fears Trump. That's not an argument, that's a mood. Countries don't fear like nervous pets. Governments calculate interests. If Dave wants to argue policy, he should argue policy. Otherwise, he's just narrating his feelings like they're facts. Then Dave says, thanks for doxing me. That's a serious claim, but it requires serious proof. If you posted identifying info publicly and someone repeated what you publicly attached to your own account, that's not doxing, that's you being surprised the internet is public. If private information was posted, that's different, but Dave's comment doesn't establish it. It just asserts it. Next, Kevin Wilson says, why not go after the people receiving drugs in the States and the bankers laundering money? Blaming Maduro is a cop-out. Here's my response. Kevin's first two questions are legitimate. Yes, you hit distribution and finance. Yes, you hit laundering. But none of that makes going after foreign criminal actors a cop-out. That's not how serious enforcement works. You don't ignore one side of a pipeline because the other side also exists. You hit both. So Kevin isn't wrong about that. What else should happen? He's wrong that it cancels out the rest. Next, Peter Maronde tries to turn this into a gun confiscation horror story. Dictator seize weapons, ICE is coming for your guns, Emperor Trump, all that dramatic fan fiction. Look, if Peter has evidence, he should present evidence. Proposed policy, concrete actions, real mechanisms. Instead, he offers paranoia. Trump is literally the worst dictator in history because he allows you to get online and call him a dictator. Now, I live within driving distance of Venezuela. If you said that in Venezuela, you would disappear. Calls it insight. Grumpy was right not to treat that as serious argument. Then Peter asks, why do you care how other people think and live? Mind your business. Here's the reality. Politics is literally a public argument about how we live together. If Peter wants everyone to mind their business, then he should start by minding his own business and stop lecturing strangers online. He doesn't want people to mind their business. He wants people to stop disagreeing with him. Then we have Gunga Din's comment, which is basically, mind your own fucking business and let ICE do their job. Weird. A violent fantasy about dead Marines and someone's daughter in a body bag. That's not political critique, that's moral rot. If someone wants to argue against intervention, they can argue costs, legality, strategy, blowback, like an adult. What that comment does is reveal the commenter's character, not their intelligence. Cecil Shoemaker says the internet will give you a stroke. Politics is a global mess. Elites don't care, and healthcare costs are crushing them. That's the most human comment here, and I'll say this. Cecil is right about stress and the outrage economy. But everyone is the same is usually surrender dressed up as wisdom. The better answer is focus on what you can control, understand the levels of government, and stop donating your mental health to online chaos. Bill Randles does the Little Hitler routine and predicts private police will take your grandfather's farm. That's another example of hyperbole replacing argument. If you believe authoritarian policies are happening, name the specific actions and show evidence. Screaming Hitler is what people do when they want moral drama instead of precision. Robert Sprecher, just insults, no argument, nothing to respond to because nothing was said. And Dave keeps link dumping experts and partisan content like a playlist is a substitute for thinking. It isn't. If you can't summarize an argument and defend it yourself, then you don't hold a view, you're renting one. So yes, on the core claims, I agree with Grumpy Farmer. The hypocrisy is real. The protest machine coordination is real. The federal versus state civics point is real. And the AI misinformation point is real. The comment section proves his point better than he ever could. Now, again, if you want my books, click the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen. And during the week, drop your questions. Tell me what clip you want dissected next. If you bring a real argument, I'll treat it seriously. If you bring slogans and hysteria, you'll get what you earned. I kind of get why Karen Carroll, and Dave don't come over on my live streams and say anything. Because if you can't handle me in the comment section of a YouTube video where you have time to think, where you have time to research, you sure as hell can't handle me live. And it would be embarrassing, wouldn't it? Super Gringo. Why'd you move to Brazil? Fourth wave feminism and KFC. I thought it was an amusement park or something, but couldn't find out someone's house. I actually think the way that guy looks at me when I record his house, he may be like in the Brazilian version of the mafia. Because he has a pool table upstairs, and there's usually a lot of guys up there, and it looks like they're talking business. Yeah. Like there's a lion up there, or a tiger or something. I can't really see it, but on the roof there. Weird. These are all hand painted too. Huh? Sim, os americanos não compreendem. Nova York é da cidade, sim, não. Wingman, cheers. Wingman gave me a cheers on one of Grumpy's videos. So here you go, Wingman. Again, what's your wife look like? The loony leftist out there. I know what Carol's girlfriend looks like. As a matter of fact, who but a loony leftist would have to point out to people that they have a black girlfriend with a picture? We can pretty much see she's black there, Dingle Nuts. Of course, the dog is cute. Your girlfriend, I don't know. She has terrible taste in men, but... And I'm using the term man very loosely. Non ne vi aquí so. Need a cart hood. I bet you that would fly with about 10 people on it. No snow or no snow. Ball. Hola. I've seen Carol Sanders. He's ugly and stupid. I'm recording this on Monday, January 12th, 2026 at 3:46 p.m. here in Arequipa, Sidonia, Brazil. This is Sean thinking out loud. I'm the Super Gringo. Before we start, if you want to support what I do here, and if you want the longer, more detailed versions of these arguments, click the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen. That takes you straight to my books on my site. Again, link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen. Also, drop your questions for the week in the comments. Not gotcha questions, not emotional spasms, real questions. If it's serious and specific, I'll answer it in a future segment. All right, today we're talking about a point that came up in the Greenland discussion. The question was, is Donald Trump trying to get the United States out of NATO? And the reason this question matters is simple. If you assume NATO is permanent, then everything looks like normal political theater. But if you treat NATO as a tool, something that can be weakened, reshaped, or functionally abandoned, then Greenland becomes more than a headline. It becomes a stress test. So let's do this like adults. First, the legal reality. A U.S. president cannot just wake up and unilaterally pull the United States out of NATO. Not cleanly. Congress put a statutory restriction in place that says the president shall not withdraw from the North Atlantic Treaty except with 2/3 Senate consent or an act of Congress, and it also restricts funding to support an unauthorized withdrawal. So, when someone says Congress wouldn't approve that, they're not wrong. That's the formal exit problem. But here's what too many people miss. You don't need a neat formal withdrawal to create the same outcome in practice. If you can't kill the alliance on paper, you can still hollow it out in reality. You can do it by eroding trust, eroding credibility, and making the security guarantee feel conditional and unreliable. You don't need to leave NATO to make NATO stop functioning like NATO. Now, about this idea. If NATO dissolves itself, then I guess we're out. Technically, NATO doesn't have a self-destruct clause. It's a treaty. Treaties don't evaporate because feelings got hurt. They end when parties withdraw, or when the parties mutually agree to terminate, or when it stops functioning in any meaningful sense. And that last one, functional collapse, is the real danger. Most alliances don't die with a signed ceremony. They die when members stop believing the guarantee. Now we bring Greenland into the picture. In the last day, officials in Europe publicly warned that a U.S. military takeover of Greenland would be the end of NATO. Greenland's government rejected any U.S. takeover and said Greenland should be defended through NATO. In other words, European leaders are telling you out loud that this kind of pressure campaign creates an alliance-level rupture. Because if the United States threatens coercion against the territory of a NATO ally, Denmark, then the alliance's internal logic breaks. You can't run a mutual defense alliance where members treat each other like targets. That's not a difference of opinion. That's an existential contradiction. So the question becomes, is Trump doing this because he wants NATO to collapse? Or is he doing this because he wants leverage and he's willing to shake the table hard enough that the dishes break. Those are two different theories. Let's separate what we can prove. Carol Sanders just said you don't have to prove, he doesn't have to prove anything because facts are facts. Well, no, that's how you make facts facts. You prove them. You have a hypothesis. You test that hypothesis multiple times. And if it comes out the same each and every time, it's no longer a hypothesis. It's a fact from what people are merely fantasizing about. By the way, I'm still waiting for Carol Sanders to come over here because I'm available. Here's what is plausible. Based on Trump's long-running approach to alliances, 1, he wants fewer entanglements. 2, he wants Europeans paying more, and he uses pressure, sometimes crude pressure, to get it. 3, he is comfortable signaling unconditionality, which is exactly the kind of thing that makes allies panic. That's not speculation, that's a pattern. But he is trying to get us out of NATO. If by that you mean formal withdrawal, the law is a major obstacle. If by that you mean the result, no more U.S. troops in European soil, minimal U.S. commitment to European wars, and a United States that refuses to be automatically pulled into a NATO crisis, then yes, there is a pathway to that outcome without a formal exit. And here's what that pathway looks like. Step by step. Step 1, make Article 5 feel uncertain. You don't have to repeal it. You just have to make allies wonder whether you'll honor it. Step 2, reduce presence. You pull troops, you reduce basing, you lower readiness integration. Step 3, create political conditions where Europe concludes it must build a defense posture that assumes diminished U.S. support. At that point, NATO still exists on paper, but it's no longer the same alliance in practice. Now here's the hard part that people will try to avoid. If NATO functionally collapses, the world doesn't become magically safer. Europe becomes more militarized, more nervous, and more fragmented. Russia watches, China watches, and the incentives shift. Some of you talk about this like it's a clean breakup. It isn't. It's a strategic rebalancing with consequences. So what do I think is happening? I think Trump is testing the limits of leverage politics on alliance relationships. And I think some people around him may like the idea of a smaller U.S. footprint in Europe and a NATO that's either radically transformed or no longer central. But I'm not going to claim mind reading. I'm going to stick to what matters, mechanisms and incentives. And the mechanism is real. Even without a formal withdrawal, you can push NATO toward functional failure. And Greenland, because it touches sovereignty, credibility, and alliance trust, would be exactly the kind of issue that accelerates that failure if mishandled. So, if you want the short version, Congress can block a formal exit, but it cannot force an alliance to remain healthy if the United States is committed to undermining its credibility. That's the adult answer. Now, if you want the deeper sourced, structured version of this argument, that's what my books are for. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen. And drop your questions for the week in the comments. If you can write the question clearly, I'll treat you like someone worth answering. If you can't, I'll treat it like what it is. I'm the Super Gringo. It's Wednesday, January 14th, 2026, 4:52 p.m. here in Eric Ames, Hedonia, Brazil. What's up, everybody? I'm the Super Gringo, and this is Sean, Thinking Out Loud. All right, today's episode is going to be about two things: platform hypocrisy and immigration reality. First, yes, I'm still in YouTube jail. Why? Because I made a meme about something I had already written. The meme was a little graphic, and apparently that's enough to get you benched, even when the point is obvious and the story is public. Now, I'm not going to repeat the full graphic phrasing because I'm not interested in giving the algorithm an excuse to stay petty. But the point of the meme was this. When the Minnesota ICE incident happened, the far left reflex kicked in like muscle memory. They were going to make the person who escalated it into the victim no matter what. No matter what the videos show, no matter what the reports say, no matter what the injuries were, And let's be clear, reports say the ICE agent ended up hospitalized with internal injuries after being hit by the vehicle. So here's the part that shouldn't be controversial. If you're in a car and you drive into someone, especially an agent in the middle of an enforcement action, that is not peaceful resistance. That is turning a vehicle into a weapon, and pretending otherwise is moral theater. Now, while I'm in YouTube jail, I've been in the comments over on Grumpy's Farmers channel on one of his newer videos saying, God bless ICE, because I'm tired of the fake outrage and selective sympathy. And of course, the usual characters show up. The usual Dave shows up, our Canadian millionaire, the reigning dipshit world champion, trying to hustle Grumpy for a free t-shirt for $2 Canadian. $2 Canadian. That's not support. That's a man trying to buy dignity with spare change. And I'm sitting there thinking, could you imagine me doing that? Hey man, I support you. Here's a couple coins. Now mail me merch. No, that's not support. That's entitlement. All right, second topic. I went to the bank today to try to get a loan, and they said I need to pay off the car first because it strengthens the credit profile, and then I'll have more room to finance a house. I'm not going to lie. I think it's fucking awesome that I have credit in Brazil, because if they check back with the U.S., I'd probably be in handcuffs. When I got back, I'm reading all this immigration garbage online, and it hits me again. Here's a basic truth that adults understand. If you cannot walk into a bank, produce identification, and at least apply for a loan, you're in the country illegally. Simple stuff. A functioning society runs on identity and verification. If you don't have the paperwork to participate in normal life, you're not oppressed by the system, you're outside the system. And then, of course, right on schedule, I had another loony leftist try the old line, if you believe in immigration laws, you're racist. No, you're just lazy. That argument is the intellectual equivalent of a toddler screaming mean when you tell him he can't eat crayons. And let me say something as clearly as I can. Stop trying to lecture me on illegal immigration. I'm a legal immigrant. I live in Brazil, right here in Ariquemes, Rondônia. I did the paperwork. I paid the fees. I deal with the bureaucracy. I follow the rules. And yes, every time people normalize illegal immigration, it makes the legal process more expensive, more complicated, and more clogged up for the people actually doing it the right way. So I sent the guy a meme, Robert Downey Jr. with the I am listening vibe, basically saying when a loony leftist starts their illegal immigration rant with, you just don't understand, while I'm sitting in my casa in Brazil. Because that's what it is. Arrogance mixed with ignorance. All right, before we wrap, do two things. First, support the work. I've got a catalog under Super Gringo Books, including Bloodstained Banner, Socialism, Capitalism, and the Myth of the Nordic Model, Dismantling the Republic, From Jobs to Justice, the Trump Era Examined, The American Left, From Liberalism to Despotism, The Biden Crime Family, Understanding Capitalism, The Dynamic Dance of Market Forces and Human Behavior, Dragon Kempo 2.0, and more. So click the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen. Pick a title, grab a copy, leave a review. That's how you keep the show alive when the platforms decide they want me quiet. Second, I want questions during the week. Actually, this show is alive anyway because I'm not monetized, because I say some controversial stuff. Drop them in the comments. What topic do you want me to hit next? What argument do you want dismantled? What story do you want broken down without the propaganda filter? Ask it, I'll take the best ones, and I'll answer them in the next segment. All right, click the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen, and I'll see you next time. Super Gringo here, Sean Armstrong, and this is Sean Thinking Out Loud. It is Wednesday, January 14th, 2026, and the time is 7:49 p.m. here in Ariquemes, Rondônia, Brazil. Now let me start with the comedy hour. We've got Dave, the Canadian millionaire, who somehow can't part with more than $2 Canadian for a t-shirt, but he can spam Jimmy Kimmel clips like that's an argument. And I'm supposed to believe this is going to make Dave look smart, or that Jimmy Kimmel is actually funny, when both of those propositions are empirically negative. Here's the real point. When your worldview depends on outsourcing your thinking to late night monologues, you've already confessed you don't have an argument, you have a playlist. Now, speaking of arguments, today I had a loony leftist on Facebook call me a Nazi and announce they were going to find out whether Sean Armstrong is my real name. So I sent them my academic writings from Sean Armstrong page. Yes, the one on WordPress, because nothing ruins a cheap smear like documentation. Then a feminist site, Fight the Patriarchy, posted a picture of me with a laughing face emojis, my Sean Thinking Out Loud logo, me in a suit, the whole production. So I responded the only reasonable way. I posted a photo of me in a suit standing next to my wife, and I wrote, just to make you corn-fed hogs feel even worse about yourselves, this is me in a suit with my wife. Because if they want to act like livestock, I'm happy to use the correct vocabulary. And of course, the feminist account keeps coming back with the same pictures and the same gibberish, like a broken pull toy with an internet connection. So I finally had to clarify something basic. I speak English and I speak Portuguese. I do not speak corn-fed hog. It is not in my repertoire. Now, while the online mob plays amateur detective and professional idiot, I'm doing what adults do, building work you can actually read. If you want to support what I do, I've got books out right now, including Bloodstained Banner, Socialism, Capitalism, and the Myth of the Nordic Model. Dismantling the Republic, the role of progressive elites in America's descent into tribalism. Dragon Kempo 2.0, from jobs to justice, the Trump era examined. The American left, from liberalism to despotism. The Biden crime family. Understanding capitalism, the dynamic dance of market forces and human behavior, and more. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen to find the full list and grab a copy. Now, I want this show to stay interactive, so here's your assignment. During the week, drop your questions in the comments. Tell me what you want me to break down. Politics, culture, propaganda tactics, economics, the expert class, whatever. If it's a real question, I'll treat it seriously. If it's a cheap insult, I'll treat it like what it is, a confession of intellectual poverty. That's it for today. Super Gringo, Eric Ames Hedonia, Sean Thinking Out Loud. Super Gringo here, Sean Armstrong. This is Sean Thinking Out Loud. Today is Thursday, January 15th, 2026. The time is 9:34 a.m. I'm in Eric Ames Hedonia, Brazil. So I guess the good woman's significant other, not even. Now, Carol Sanders, Mr. One Up, came back with, he picked the one book that doesn't, have concrete stuff in it. It's my ghost hunting book, which I did for 2 years with Scientific Paranormal out of Syracuse, which is a TAPS affiliated team, or was. It's no longer together. Anyway, he came back with, ghosts aren't real. Nowhere in that book did I ever assert ghosts were real. It goes through investigation techniques and some of my pet peeves too, in investigation techniques, and the history of ghost hunting techniques. I would like to know if Carol Sanders could tell me what a EMF meter is or an EVP is before, because he seems to be an expert on everything, except obviously not this, really. Spouse, from what it looks like, hired the same lawyer who represented the George Floyd family. And yes, that's usually how this goes. Not a criminal lawyer, a civil rights lawyer. Which tells you the play. Now you notice he didn't pick a book about how violent the loony left is, or the history of the United States, or the Federalist Papers, or anything concrete that I could destroy him on. He picked the one that, he didn't read, and he shared his feelings. Well, that's okay. A lot of people feel that way. I am a skeptic. That's why I investigate. That's how we make facts. We investigate. We have hypotheses, and then we investigate them. And if we get the same, result time after time, then it generally becomes a fact. Until we find some other evidence that refutes what we found. They want a settlement. The federal government often settles rather than drag these things through court. And while we're at it, what is it with Minneapolis and this cultural need to riot, burn, and then act shocked when consequences show up? Now, one of the loony leftists over on that Fight the Patriarchy page asked, "Why are you on this site?" So I told him, I'm on a national drive to promote common sense. Still waiting on a response. Because, see, common sense is their natural predator. Now, let me say this carefully because some of you need remedial reading. If you want a serious discussion about law enforcement operations, the answer is not some childish fantasy about road games and who can hit who. The adult answer is clear. Perimeters, professional training, body cameras, coordination with local authorities, de-escalation when possible, and arrests when necessary. If you want to live in a society instead of a bar fight, you don't cheer on stupidity, on either side. Also, if ICE is so terrifying and terrorizing people, why are you following them around, doxing them and trying to intimidate them? Do you hear yourselves? You're claiming to fear them while behaving like you're trying to terrorize them. And as a legal immigrant to another country, I have a simple question. You people keep screaming, "Nobody is above the law, not even the president." Okay, then why do you talk like illegal immigration should be exempt from law entirely? Make it make sense. And here's how you can tell you've really angered someone who's chronically online. They start going through your Facebook, leaving emojis on posts like they're doing forensics. That's not an argument, that's a symptom. I've spent a lifetime around people trained to do violence professionally. You know what that training really teaches you? Avoid stupid situations. Don't escalate with your ego. And don't create problems you don't know how to finish. Which is why some of you, who have never done anything hard, keep finding yourselves in the same dumb spots over and over. And yes, I also find it telling how many 20 and 30-something fourth-wave feminists are online losing their minds on a Thursday morning when most functioning adults are at work. Apparently, employment is patriarchal now, too. Now, if you want to support what I do, support the work, my books include Bloodstained Banner, Socialism, Capitalism, and the Myth of the Nordic Model, Dismantling the Republic, the Role of Progressive Elites in America's Descent in Tribalism, Dragon Kempo 2.0, From Jobs to Justice, the Trump Era Examined, The American Left, From Liberalism to Despotism, The Biden Crime Family, Understanding Capitalism, the Dynamic Dance of Market Forces and Human Behavior. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen. And for the week ahead, drop your questions in the comments. Tell me what you want me to break down. Politics, culture, economics, propaganda, or just the latest internet meltdown. If it's a real question, I'll answer it like an adult. If it's a drive-by insult, I'll treat it like what it is. An admission you have nothing. Super Gringo, Eric Ames, Sidonia, Brazil, Sean, thinking out loud. Super Gringo here, Sean Armstrong. This is Sean thinking. Oh yeah, I started using titles so I could split up. You know, I know where videos started and ended while I was editing, so I hope you like the new graphics. Out loud. Today is Thursday, January 15th, 2026. The time is 3:51 p.m. I'm in Eric Ames, Sidonia, Brazil. Are today's young adults really missing out on meaningful connections? Let's dive into a theory that will offend the chronically online, which is how you know it's worth discussing. If you like this kind of content, hit like, subscribe, and share. And as always, drop your thoughts in the comments. Here's the pattern I keep seeing. A lot of people complain about dating culture, but they're not doing the basic work that makes any relationship possible. This isn't about perfection, it's about the fundamentals. Health habits, hygiene, self-respect, and social skills. And if you hear that as judgment, good. Some of you need judgment because your life is literally the result of your habits. Past generations had hobbies that built competence. Restoring a car, gardening, building things, learning a skill. joining groups that required showing up in real life. Today, a lot of people unwind by consuming content, scrolling, binging, rage clicking, and here's the problem. Passive consumption doesn't give you identity. It gives you distraction. If you want a better social life, build a life that's worth sharing with other humans. Social media takes normal human insecurities and turns them into a competition for attention. So you get people performing their entire personality for validation. Every moment is content, every decision is a post, every emotion is a campaign, and then mysteriously they feel empty. Well, yes, because if your self-worth depends on strangers, you don't have self-worth, you have a dependency. A society like making up stories about your accomplishments, that's because you need validation from strangers, but you haven't actually done anything, so you have to make it up. Full of responsibility is harder to manipulate. When you have a job to keep, a family to protect, a home to pay for, you don't have the luxury of living in fantasy. Responsibility disciplines your behavior. Idleness produces drama, chaos, and attention seeking. So if you want a more stable culture, stay with stable people. Now, a quick distinction between people love buzzwords. Narcissistic behavior is not always a clinical diagnosis. Sometimes it's just character, encouraged by a culture that rewards self-absorption. But yes, some people are struggling, and struggling people don't build healthy relationships by accident. They have to do the work. Therapy, discipline, community, routine, something real. So here's the core idea. Modern relationships are struggling because people are less engaged, less skilled, and more mediated by screens. Hobbies matter, responsibility matters, and social media is not a substitute for a life. Now, what do you think? Are we losing touch with meaningful relationships? Drop your answer below. And here's the weekly ask. Send me questions during the week. Topics you want me to break down, relationships, culture, social dynamics, mental health trends, whatever. To support the channel and my work, click the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen. And if you want to read what I've written, start here. Bloodstained Banners, Socialism, Capitalism, and the Myth of the Nordic Model. Dismantling the Republic, the Role of Progressive Elites in America's Descent into Tribalism. Dragon Cambo 2.0, From Jobs to Justice, the Trump Era Examined. The American Left, From Liberalism to Despotism. The Biden Crime Family, Understanding Capitalism, the Dynamic Dance of Market Forces and Human Behavior. In the next segment, we'll look at a Black Panther group talking about violence against ICE agents. This is the Super Gringo from Ariquemes, Rondônia, Brazil, and this is Sean thinking out loud. Super Gringo here, Sean Armstrong. This is Sean thinking out loud. Today is Thursday, January 15th, 2026. The time is 4:01 p.m. I'm in Ariquemes, Rondônia, Brazil. A shocking clip is circulating. A man claiming affiliation with a Black Panther group talks about violence against ICE agents. I'm not going to replay threats or glorify them. We're going to talk about what this rhetoric means and what it does to a country that's already on edge. If you value this kind of breakdown, like, subscribe, and comment. Today we're covering three things. Yeah, I don't know why ICE agents and, CBP agents would be on edge. I have no idea, how things could, like a shooting might happen. 1. Why threats like this are a warning sign. 2. Why the public is splitting harder on ICE and immigration enforcement. 3. How media narratives are shaping what people think they saw. When someone goes on camera and talks about hurting federal agents, that's not protest, that's incitement, or at minimum public posturing that encourages the worst people to do the worst things. You mean like carrying a gun to a riot so the worst of the worst happens? I'm going to say this again. I think I've said it like 100 times. I don't want people to die. But if they do, let's hope it's the dumb ones. And let me be clear, if you're threatening violence, you're not a revolutionary. You're a liability to your community and to the cause you claim to represent. We've already seen protests where members of the new Black Panther Party were present and armed, according to local reporting. However, you think you're signaling what you're actually doing is pouring gasoline on a match. Dude, you really think they're here? They can't keep up with me when they have time to think, when they have time to look stuff up. They can't keep up with me. You think they're going to come over here live? That would be embarrassing.
Are you fucking getting it yet?
A bifurcated reality looks like. Two sides watch different clips, read different headlines, and live in different moral universes. That's how you get civil war talk. Not because most people want war, but because the incentives reward the most extreme voices. And right now, you missed my wife's butt. I may actually have to rewind it. She has like a great butt. I mean, it's like that could like put my podcast over the top. The national temperature is high enough that even the president is floating hard power options like the Insurrection Act in response to anti-ICE protests. If you're trying to understand why these clips land the way they do, look at public opinion. A recent CNN SSRS poll reports Americans say 51% to 31% that ICE enforcement actions are making cities less safe rather than safer. And another recent poll found GOP voters themselves are split on how aggressive enforcement should be, including concerns about the use of force, with immigration approval numbers softer than you'd expect, given how central this issue is to the current administration. So here's the strategic problem for ICE and DHS. If you lose legitimacy in the public mind, every operation becomes a PR event, and every incident becomes a recruitment poster for your opposition. Media doesn't just report events, it frames them. However, I will say this, DOJ needs to step up convictions of these idiots. Start charging them with federal crimes so they can't be charged with state crimes and be let off by other loony leftists. One outlet leads with agent defends himself. Another leads with mother killed, same incident, different moral story. And that's why you have to do this like an adult. Separate what you know from what you feel, and what you saw from what someone told you you saw. When tensions rise, people try to win in courts, not just in streets. That includes civil suits, injunctions, and political litigation that shapes what law enforcement can do. And it also includes extremists on both ends trying to provoke a response because they think chaos helps them. Threats against agents are part of the game. And if you're cheering it, you're a mark. So here's the bottom line. Threats against ICE agents are morally bankrupt and practically stupid. Public confidence in ICE is under pressure, and the media battle over what this all means is as important as the events themselves. Now I want your take. What's driving this escalation? Policy, tech? You see, I like this format because I can put in timely stuff and still be here for questions. Now nobody shows up, but I don't care. I did this one on the good shooting. No new data that negates the fact that she was in the wrong and it was a good shoot. I think the next one, or is it the one after? I think it's the one after I talk about this latest one. So, yeah. So I'm a little behind because of being in YouTube jail, but it gives us time to kind of mull over what's happened, I think. I think it's actually a good thing that I'm a little behind. There's something deeper. Drop your answer in the comments. And during the week, send me questions. Topics you want me to hit next. Immigration, civil unrest, media propaganda, lawfare, any of it. To support the channel and my work, click the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen. And if you want to read what I've written, here are a few from my list. I'm trying to sound polite because if you want to support my channel is not monetized. Just buy the books so you don't sound fucking retarded when you talk to someone. Pretty simple, but I can't say that because, nobody's, I've had sales on my, how to kill people books, guns, martial arts, but nobody wants to learn what shitbags the loony left are. Maybe it's because they already know it, most of them, that are going to buy the books anyway, but wouldn't it be great to have facts? Bloodstained Banner, Socialism, Capitalism, and the Myth of the Nordic Model, Dismantling the Republic, The Role of Progressive Elites in America's Descent into Tribalism, From Jobs to Justice, the Trump Era Examined, The American Left, From Liberalism to Despotism, The Biden Crime Family, Understanding Capitalism, The Dynamic Dance of Market Forces and Human Behavior, The Cost of Illegal Immigration, Dragon Kempo 2.0. Super Gringo, Eric Ames, Hedonia, Brazil, Sean Thinking Out Loud. Peace. Today is Thursday the 15th, 2026, and the time right now is 5:49 p.m. here in Eric Ames, Hedonia, Brazil. I'm Sean Armstrong, the Super Gringo, and this is Sean Thinking Out Loud. Single camera, no gimmicks, just clarity. Before we start, if you want my books, click the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen. That takes you straight to Super Gringo Books by Sean Armstrong. Click a cover, preview it, grab what interests you. And during the week, drop your questions in the comments, challenges, topics, clips you want broken down. I'll pull the best ones and deal with them directly. Why the Epstein files still aren't public and what that implies. Let's start with the core problem. We are repeatedly told that the FBI and the Department of Justice possess. My question is, if Trump did something illegal and is on that list, and Bill Clinton was friends with Epstein up until his last arrest. So why wouldn't Bill testify before Congress and bury Donald Trump? I'll wait. A massive archive of Epstein-related files described publicly as hundreds of megabytes of digital material. And here's the basic question no one in power seems eager to answer. How does a school teacher turn into a man worth roughly $500 million with private islands, head of state on speed dial, and access to hundreds of underage girls? That question does not go away just because it makes powerful people uncomfortable. There was a disclosure deadline, December 19th. We are now well past that, and the excuse we keep hearing is delay. Here's the problem. These are digital files. Digital files do not need months to be photocopied. They do not need years to be organized. They do not need endless bureaucratic rituals to exist. So when the government slow walks a digital archive, that isn't incompetence, that's a choice. So far, what has actually been released? By any honest accounting, less than 1%. One small slice out of a mountain of material we are told exists that raises legitimate questions. How is that legal? How is that not obstruction? And why does transparency only apply when it's politically convenient? A system that hides evidence while claiming moral authority has already failed its credibility test. Now we're told the redactions are about protecting survivors. But here's the contradiction. Survivor names have already appeared unredacted in some releases. Meanwhile, alleged abuser names are blacked out. That is not victim protection, that is perpetrator insulation. And when that insulation flows upwards towards powerful institutions and political actors, the conclusion becomes unavoidable. In 1996, a woman known publicly as Maria contacted the FBI and reported abuse involving underage girls. For decades, the system treated her as unreliable, imaginary, or irrelevant. And then years later, documents emerged confirming her complaint existed all along. That isn't a misunderstanding, that's institutional dishonesty. Then the truth arrives 30 years later. It isn't just decades. That would mean Obama had that information. Clinton had that information. Biden had that information. So now it's Trump? Get out of here. It's an admission of suppression. We're also asked to believe this entire operation involved only 2 people. That story collapses under its own weight. 2 people do not manage hundreds of victims, global travel, political access, and financial shielding without help. If critics think that that conclusion is paranoid, here's the solution. Release the files. Prove everyone wrong. Transparency settles arguments instantly. Now, I'm careful with language here. I am not asserting certainty, but the pattern, access, leverage, secrecy, protection, looks like a blackmail operation. And that raises serious national security questions. Who was he working for? Who benefited? And why does no one in authority seem eager to find out? Those are not conspiracy questions. Those are oversight questions. Elite impunity reaches its absolute peak when it involves children. If soldiers can be sent to die for abstract national values, but powerful men can exploit vulnerable girls without consequence, then the system has inverted its moral priorities. That is not sustainable, and it is not something a serious society can ignore. If the files exist, they include FBI interview reports, suspect interviews, seized digital evidence, prosecutorial decision memos, co-conspirator analyses, and the unified question is simple: who is being protected and by whom? Here's the bottom line: release the files, or admit that the system is designed to protect an untouchable class. There is no third option that preserves legitimacy. And if you want my books, again, click the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen. Drop your questions during the week. Tell me what you want dissected next. I'm Sean Armstrong, the Super Gringo, and this is Sean Thinking Out Loud. It is Friday, January 16th, 2026 at 1:15 p.m. and I'm coming to you from Ariquemes, Rondônia, Brazil. I'm Sean Armstrong, the Super Gringo, and this is Sean Thinking Out Loud. So today I was debating on Facebook, which I do a lot because, well, someone has to. But I debate differently. I debate with facts, I debate with sources, I debate with receipts, because feelings are not evidence and slogans are not arguments. And of course, surprise, my account got suspended for about an hour. About an hour, not because I was wrong, not because I was lying, not because I broke some moral rule of debate. It was suspended because I was kicking some leftist butt, and that happens about every other day. They do it to slow me down. That's all it is. Stall tactics. Digital duct tape. And I want to say this clearly because I finally made a meme about it, but I want to say it here out loud on camera. Until I receive a check from you reimbursing me for the money I spent to do the immigration thing legally, you can shut up about illegal immigration. Until you pay me back for doing it the right way, go sit down. I'm done playing with you people. I don't see one of you taking an illegal immigrant into your house so other taxpayers don't have to pay for him. You want to preach? Fine. Then practice. Otherwise, stop talking. And to irritate them even more, when they start talking about illegal immigration and ICE, I start responding in Brazilian Portuguese. Because I live in Brazil and I can. Watch this. Se você não vai pegar o que eu gostei para imigrar legalmente, então fique quieto. That means if you're not reimbursing me for doing it legally, you don't get to lecture me about doing it illegally. Now, if you want the deeper dive version of these arguments, not just the quick punches and comment sections, I've got you covered. Because I've written the books and I actually did the work. If you haven't already, check out my titles. The American Left, From Liberalism to Despotism. Dismantling the Republic, the role of progressive elites in America's descent into tribalism. The Biden crime family. Understanding Capitalism, the dynamic dance of market forces in human behavior. From Jobs to Justice, the Trump era examined. And Dragon Kempo 2.0, because some of you need political education and some of you need self-defense. Some of you need both. To get the books, click the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen. That takes you straight to the list. Now here's what I want from you this week. Don't just watch, participate. I want your questions. Drop them in the comments during the week. Tell me what argument you want dismantled. Tell me what headline you want translated into reality. Tell me what claim you keep seeing that you want answered with facts and sources, not vibes. And if Facebook mysteriously decides I need another timeout, fine. I'll be right here, still talking, still writing, still building, still publishing. Again, click the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen. Get the books, arm yourself with arguments, and bring me your questions all week. I'm the Super Gringo, and this is Sean Thinking Out Loud. It is Monday, January 19, 2026, 9:09 a.m., and I'm coming to you from Ariquemes, Hedonia, Brazil. Welcome back to Sean Thinking Out Loud. I'm the Super Gringo. And today's episode is about a phenomenon that the Democrat Party treats like a religion, defending illegal aliens over citizens while pretending ICE agents are both too dangerous to exist and somehow weak enough to bully. Pick a lane. Let's start with the obvious. If your moral compass points towards protect the people who broke the law to get here and away from protect the citizens' consequences, you don't have compassion, you have a PR strategy. And it's a lazy one. Because here's the routine. Step 1, flood the zone with slogans. Human rights, families, compassion. Step 2, ignore the costs. Schools, hospitals, housing, local budgets, wages for low-skilled workers, public safety. Step 3, when enforcement happens, suddenly it's a crisis. Not because someone got hurt, but because reality interrupted your narrative. Now, let me say something slowly for the loony left. A country that cannot enforce its border is not a country. It is a suggestion. And suggestions don't survive contact with the real world. And speaking of contact with the real world, look what's been happening in Minnesota. An ICE-related shooting of Renee Good triggered days of protest and escalating tensions, with major outlets reporting dual narratives, political fallout, and significant unrest dynamics. Federal officials have been publicly debating investigations in jurisdictions, while the streets get hotter and the rhetoric gets dumber. Here's the part you're allowed to say out loud without being cast out of the Progressive Book Club. Attacking law enforcement is not activism. It's tantrum culture with a bail fund. And the same crowd that calls ICE violent monsters somehow keeps showing up to harass them in person. So let me translate that Democrat logic into plain English. ICE is terrifying, but also I'm going to run directly at them because I'm morally superior. That's not courage. That's what happens when ideology replaces risk assessment. Also, don't miss the shell game. When Democrats can't defend illegal immigration on merits, they pivot to demonizing enforcement. They don't argue policy, they argue emotions. And they rely on the same tactic every time. If you enforce the law, you're cruel. If you oppose law-breaking, you're hateful. If you notice the second-order effects, you're a monster. And if you ask for data, you're triggering. Yes, your feelings are very moving, touching, historic even. Still not a substitute for policy. Here's the standard I use. If you want a different immigration system, change the law. Lobby, vote, persuade. But once you normalize obstructing enforcement, and especially once you normalize street-level intimidation, you're teaching the country that whoever yells loudest gets to nullify law. That ends the same way every time, with escalation. And then in peak Democrat fashion, you act shocked when the federal government reaches for stronger tools. Which brings us to the Insurrection Act chatter. When Trump threatens the Insurrection Act, civil liberties organizations point out that it's a rarely used and extreme emergency power, and they're right to warn people about how broad it can be. You don't have to like it, but calling it lies just because you dislike the speaker is childish. The grown-up argument is about thresholds, necessity, and safeguards, not name-calling. So here's my position. I want a secure border. I want lawful immigration. I want policies that don't punish citizens, especially working-class citizens, so activists can feel virtuous on social media. And I want the Democrat Party to stop pretending that compassion means no limits, because if your compassion has no limits, your taxpayers do. Now, if you want numbers, sources, and coherent framework instead of emotional spasms, I wrote an entire paper on this. The cost of illegal immigration. It lays out the fiscal impact, the service burdens, and the policy incentives without the fairy tales. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen. And while you're there, check out my other work, including Dismantling the Republic, the Role of Progressive Elites in America's Descent into Tribalism, The American Left, From Liberalism to Despotism. Now I want your questions all week. Drop your questions in the comments or send them through the contact link on my site. What topic do you want me to torch next? Illegal immigration? ICE? The Insurrection Act? Sanctuary policies? media dishonesty, or the Democrat habit of calling every boundary violence. Because I'm not here to babysit feelings. I'm here to talk like adults. I'm the Super Gringo. That's Sean thinking out loud. That's it for today. Now, I want your questions during the week. Drop them in the comments, topics, clips, arguments you want me to break down. If it's a real question, I'll treat it seriously. If it's slogans and hysteria, I'll treat it like what it is. And again, if you want my books, click the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen. That takes you straight to the book hub. Click a cover, preview it, grab what interests you. I'm Sean Armstrong, the Super Gringo, and this is Sean Thinking Out Loud.
Every time I tried to stand, they pushed me down. Now I've had enough, can't take it